This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
You are listening to the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, proud member of the CLNS Media Network. This episode is brought to you by Prizepicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the Prizepicks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prizepicks to get $50 when you play $5. Prizepicks, run your game. Also, eat smart with Factor. Get started with factormeals.com/Bedard50off and use code Bedard50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Okay, so this is a very special episode, one that everybody looks forward to because, and I get a lot of requests. When are you going to talk to Greg Cosell? When are you going to talk to Greg Cosell? Well, we have Greg Cosell, executive producer, analyst, NFL matchup, senior NFL films producer for 45 years. He is the man. I consider him one of my mentors in this business. We are happy to have him. Greg, how we doing?
Greg, I appreciate the introduction. Thank you. It has been a few years for me. Yeah, I'm going into my 46th NFL season, which is hard to believe.
Yeah, that's awesome, and we are very thankful for it. There isn't anything that you don't do that I don't consume, whether it's Ross Tucker or your stuff in Nashville and things like that. So happy to have you on here, and this is going to be sort of a hodgepodge because Greg has seen so much stuff, including we're going to start with. I just want his impressions because I know Greg has done a lot of media over the years in Nashville and has watched the Titans up close. I think you just had a live event in Nashville.
I did. Third year in a row, a live podcast. It was awesome because we had Coach Callahan for an hour, and it was really a lot of fun. We had 250 people.
Wow, look at you. You're like the Beatles or something. So I just want you as what you do when you study. I just want, in talking to Patriots fans, because they've been used to a certain style of defense over the years. What can you tell us about the playing style, what to expect from a Mike Vrabel defense? We've already seen them add a bunch of pieces, which we'll get into a little bit. That seems to have added a lot of speed, gap penetration, like all that stuff to a defense that, has gotten pretty slow over the years. But just your general impressions of a Mike Vrabel defense that we might see this season.
Yeah. Although I think, though, Greg, when you look at Nashville, which I obviously see Tennessee all the time, I think it was a combination probably of Vrabel and Shane Bowen, who believed in a lot of things that the Titans did, a lot of what we call sim pressures, which are four-man pass rush, where a defensive lineman drops out and you actually rush a linebacker or a DB as the fourth rusher. So I think it was Shane Bowen quite a bit as well that had a lot to do with that. But you're essentially dealing with what I would call a 5-2 front. I guess some call it a 3-4. To me, it's really a 5-2 because you have 5 on the line of scrimmage. You've got 2 stack backers. I think that's sort of foundationally how they play. And then, of course, when you get to your pure pass situations, you get the 4-man rush and you get, different pressure concepts. But, I think that's, what they did in free agency and the draft as well, I think speaks to what they're trying to get done within the context of a 5-2 base. And then how do you take some of those players and put them into your pass rush front? And I think there's a couple of players that clearly fit that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And why don't we go into that? Would you say about Vrabel's defense that I remember there was some game film that I pulled up. Oh, it was against the Bengals a couple years ago where, the Bengals were healthy. They had, Chase and, everybody was available, and they basically completely blanketed them. So they suffocated them the entire game. I think they won like 27 or 24-3. Would you say this is an aggressive defense, or does Mike sort of know how to middle the thing where, be aggressive, but also not give up too many big plays?
I would say that's the approach. I think they're selectively aggressive. It's not like, let's say, an old Rex Ryan defense where you're just coming after the quarterback. I think it's selective aggression. I think you'll see a lot of different coverage looks. they actually have a lot of veteran players on the back end. I mean, obviously Gonzalez is going into second year, third year, whatever it is.
Third year.
Third. He's not a veteran, although I think he's going to be a terrific player. But they've got a lot of veteran players who can handle a lot of volume on the back end. They signed Carlton Davis, who's been in the league. And don't forget, he played in Tampa, where Todd Bowles was very aggressive with pressure concepts. So he's used to different kinds of coverages that result from pressure. I think that there's a lot they have to work with. They signed veteran players. I mean, Robert Spillane has been in multiple systems. I think he's a really good player, by the way. He was in Pittsburgh, where they couldn't get him off the field. They kept, drafting guys, and they couldn't get him off the field. He ended up playing in their nickel and dime, and the same thing happened with the Raiders. So you're dealing with guys that have been through a lot of different coaches, a lot of different schemes. They're smart, they're aware, they're savvy players. I think that's what he's trying to build. I think he's trying to build a defense where they can do a lot of different things, and guys are not going to make mistakes. Look, you've been around long enough, Greg, to know what do defensive coaches always talk about. They want to be able to trust their players. Sometimes they may not put the best athlete on the field because another guy can go out there and they know that he won't make mistakes. Spillane's a perfect example. He's probably a better athlete than he's given credit for, but he's certainly not a big-time stud athlete, but yet he just doesn't make mistakes, and he can play in every single personnel package.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about some of those free agents. And another city that you do a ton of film work for is Philadelphia. And, of course, the marquee free agent that the Patriots were able to land was Milton Williams.
Yes.
Of the Eagles, your impressions of Milton Williams and what he can bring to the Patriots.
I've been on Milton Williams since I watched his college tape at Louisiana. I really liked him a lot. He was multi-positional in college. He was multi-positional with the Eagles. A perfect example of what we were just talking about a moment ago. You can line him up in a base 5-2 front, which, of course, the Eagles played as their base front. And then when they went to their pure pass and it was a 4-man D line, he fit perfectly. Now, obviously, they had Jalen Carter on the other side, and most offenses slid their center to Carter. But the bottom line is, if you get a one-on-one, you have to win. That's the bottom line. And he won a lot of them this year. And people, I'm sure, remember the Super Bowl where he was a dominant force in that game. But I think Milton Williams is a really, really good player. I don't want to say he's just scratching the surface because he's coming off a terrific season, but I think that he fits to me exactly what Mike Vrabel and company would like. A guy that's multi-dimensional, multi-positional, can play in any front. You can line him up at defensive end at times if you want. You can line him up at 3 technique, 4-eye, 1 technique. He can line up pretty much anywhere along your front and be a factor.
Other free agents that they signed, Marcus Epps was in Philly for a while before going to the Raiders for a year. What kind of safety is he? Is he more of a free safety or a strong safety?
Yeah. I mean, I think there can be some physicality to him, but I think at his core, he's probably more of a back-end player. I would assume within the context of the players that they have, and again, we don't know how, who's going to play in what position, but my sense is just looking at their roster as we speak, on Friday, May 9th, which, hey, teams are just starting, the offseason programs. There's a lot to happen between now and game 1, as you know, Greg. I would think he'd not be a starting player within the context of their team, but we'll see how everything plays out. There's a lot of, they have a lot of depth now. I mean, I look at this defensive roster. I mean, I think Jelani Tavai has been a really nice player for them. I don't know if he starts. Jack Gibbons was a really interesting player in Tennessee. He's long, he's athletic. You may not see him as a true starter, but you can play him snaps and he's not going to hurt you. So there's a lot of good depth. They really changed and put together a defense with a lot of sort of interchangeable, multidimensional players.
Yeah, absolutely. They did. A couple other guys, I don't know if you have an opinion on them. You mentioned Davis, but of course they got Harold Landry, who's been in this system from Tennessee. Tonga from Arizona, who I assume is going to be a rotational sort of like run-stuffing guy. And Chason from the Raiders, who really came on strong at the end of last year on the edge.
Yeah, and he's He's a fascinating guy because he's the LSU kid, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember watching, he was a first round pick. I remember thinking he had a chance when he came out of LSU, and it just hasn't happened. Maybe a change of scenery. In some ways, Landry and Chason, you could argue, are somewhat similar. Landry did not have the great year a year ago, which is why they let him go in Tennessee, because you don't let pass rushers go if they're really good. So he did not have the great year. He's certainly capable. Chason's another guy. Chason never really got it going, and then started to show flashes, last year in particular. So, like I said, we'll see how all this plays out. We don't know the answer to that, because the bottom line is, as you well know, you got to rush the quarterback in this league. So when it gets to the pure pass situations, Michael put the guys out there that he believes can rush the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Offensively, any opinion on Morgan Moses, Stephon Diggs, obviously coming off the ACL, so we'll have to see, and Mac Hollins?
Well, look, their O-line, this is not a profound statement. Their O-line's not been very good the last couple of years. And Moses is just one of those solid veteran right tackles that you can line up and play with. And they needed that. They needed a veteran player on the edge who you could just, feel pretty comfortable with. Diggs, we don't know what his status is. He's also older now. He's coming off a major injury. It's hard to know what he is. Hollins was really good in Buffalo. I mean, he's one of those guys. He's a special teams player. From what I understand, he's a great team guy. I don't know if you really want him to be a starting receiver, even though he can make some plays. I guess the guy that didn't work for the previous coaching staff the way they hoped, given that he was a second-round pick, was Jalen Polk. And again, now when a new coaching staff comes in with a new coordinator, and obviously the new coordinator is the old coordinator, so we'll see how Josh McDaniels feels as he tries to sort of work through this receiving core, because everybody, I would imagine, has a clean slate. Even Javon Baker, the fourth-round pick a year ago. We'll get to the draft picks shortly, but some of these veterans, it's just hard to know exactly what they are, particularly Diggs, who's obviously a big deal. Didn't they sign him to a 3-year deal?
Yeah, but I think it's really a 2-year deal.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously at his best, he's a volume receiver. He's not the vertical dimension that he once was. He was never a true burner, but he had vertical ability. He may not be that guy anymore, given that he's later in his career and that he's coming off a major knee injury. But he certainly is at his best. He certainly works the short to intermediate areas really, really well. Knows how to get open, knows how to find voids and zones, understands all these things. So we'll see, but as I said, age and a pretty significant injury, it's hard to know. I mean, the guy that I find really interesting, but again, everybody has a clean slate, is Kayshon Boutte. I find him really interesting. We'll see how it all plays out.
Yep, absolutely. And we will be back in 1 second with a discussion about the draft picks that Greg has seen after you hear from our friends over at Prizepicks.
CLNS Patriots coverage is powered by Prizepicks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup.
Okay, we are back, and we are going to go through the Patriots draft picks that Greg himself has seen and evaluated. It's not everyone. I think he has not seen the 2 offensive linemen, Jared Wilson, and also the later tackle, Marcus Bryant, who is sort of a developmental offensive tackle. Let's start with the first-round pick. Will Campbell. There's been a lot of discussion about him, about arm length, about all this stuff. What do you see on film as far as a guy who the Patriots probably are going to plug and play at left tackle?
Yeah, and it's an interesting discussion. And again, people can say that there's no difference between 33 inches and 32 and 5/8, and there's 2 sides to these, and reasonable, smart people can disagree. But the one thing that I do know is there's 64 offensive tackles in the NFL. Only 4 of them have arm length under 33 inches. For a lot of offensive coaches, O-line coaches, that's the delineation mark for an offensive tackle. So he's under 33 inches. Now, I think that his tape is good, It's funny when you watch tape, and I asked a former GM this question because, again, I try to learn from as many people as I can. I've been watching tape for a long time, Greg. So when I watch a player and 90% of his tape is really good, and I thought that was the case with Campbell because he's very controlled, he's very composed in pass protection. I thought he played with good balance, good body control. I did think he used his hands proactively and efficiently. I thought he anchored really well, and that's really important in this league because speed to power is the number one thing that you have to be able to deal with as a tackle. But he had a really bad game against Landon Jackson, who's now in your division, of course, with Buffalo. But he had a really bad game against Landon Jackson of Arkansas. And, so I asked, the guys who do this, I don't get hired and fired, fortunately, if I'm wrong, but, how you deal with when a guy has a bad game, and there's reasons he had the bad game. That was a game where his arm length issues showed up. And I didn't get a great answer, because I don't know if there is a great answer. Like, you have to decide how you feel about that. But from everything I gather, and you're there, they're going to play him at left tackle, and he's a day one starter, correct? I mean, that's why you don't draft a guy with the fourth pick in the draft who played 3 years of left tackle in the SEC, not to make him your starting left tackle. My guess is he'll be good, but there might be times where he has some bad snaps where it shows up. But he's a really solid player. I made it a point to listen to him speak at the podium at the combine. He's an impressive kid. I really liked his whole manner. I mean, you could tell that he's just one of those guys that you want in your O-line room. So clearly, I mean, we talked about Morgan Moses at right tackle. They'll be better at the tackle position. I think Campbell will be good, like I said, but I think people shouldn't be surprised if he has some bad snaps here and there, just because it's going to be an issue somewhere along the line. Now, when I say be an issue, I don't mean it's going to be an issue where he can't play, but it'll be an issue on certain reps.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with your evaluation, and I'm glad you pointed out the Landon Jackson film. That was the film that I was just like, okay, this is a little rough. And now they're in the same division together. That's going to be very interesting. But yeah, we're going to have to see how it plays out. Second round pick, TreVeyon Henderson, the running back out of Ohio State.
One of my favorite guys in the draft. And you know why he was one of my favorite guys? And I guarantee for Mike Vrabel, this meant something, and it might have meant a lot. I thought he was the best pass protection back in the draft, hands down. This guy is a man when it comes to pass protection. And we all know he's explosive. I mean, it's funny. I came away watching him, and this might be crazy. You'll remember this because you've been around for a few years like I have. Maybe younger fans won't remember this. I came away feeling that there were kind of shades of Brian Westbrook in his game. Because he's explosive. He's a very good receiver. There's a physicality to the way he plays. I mean, like I said, you can watch him in pass protection. And I'm trying to remember. I'm going to pull up my notes because I think I made a note of it. Let's see. Oh, it was against Kobe King of Penn State, who I believe was drafted, a linebacker. And there were times he just put him on the ground in pass protection. And he also on a Will Howard designed run, he laid out Jalen Reed, who's a safety who was drafted for Penn State. I mean, I guarantee that was one reason they drafted him. Obviously, he's explosive. He can take it to the house on any given play, and he's a very good receiver. So he's a complete player, but he's a man. And, I think Vrabel's trying to create, look, Mike, you know what kind of guy he is. I mean, he's trying to create an atmosphere of toughness, competitiveness, take no prisoners, and Henderson is that guy.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention about Campbell, and this also goes with Henderson, one aspect of this and the roles that these guys are going to play, you can't underestimate, Josh McDaniels being there. There was last year with Alex Van Pelt and sort of these like old school West Coast guys, it was puzzling how many times that they didn't help people, and especially in certain matchups. One thing going for Will Campbell and also Henderson, who I assume is going to be more of a third down back, at least to start.
Early on, yeah.
Yeah. Is like Josh McDaniels is not, if there's a bad matchup for Will Campbell or he's struggling during a game, he's going to have a plan for that going into the game to help mitigate the issues. And I think that's sort of their thinking about Campbell. And also, do you see Henderson in Josh McDaniels' offense being able to be that sort of third down back, that James White, Shane Vereen, all these guys?
I think he can do that. Absolutely. And I think because of the pass protection, you're going to feel comfortable doing that because teams are going to test not only Henderson if it's third down, but of course they're still going to test Drake May. He's only a second-year player. So yes, I think that was a major factor in why he was drafted. I mean, I personally thought that he was drafted. And again, I don't do mock drafts and I don't do lists, but I didn't, and I never use the word reach because to me, when people say a guy reached, and again, you may use it, so this is not personal to you, but just because I know what I do and I know how hard I work, so I know what teams do. If you say a team reached, then basically what you're saying is you're smarter than the 35 people that work for the organization that do this for a living. So I don't do that, But to me, Henderson was drafted where I would have felt that should be where he should have been drafted. I think he was a really good prospect. And I even thought if he was late first round, I thought that would have been okay too. But I think he's, and from what I gather from people that I've spoken to, he's an unbelievable kid too, from what I gather. Yeah. Like he's the kind of guy you want on your team.
Yeah, there's basically a thread, an easily seen thread with the free agents and the draft picks. They're trying to change the football culture here. What's interesting is like as soon as we're done, I'm going over. The Patriots have their rookie minicamp open.
Right.
Us and look, they're in shorts. They don't know where the hell they're going. Like there's not a lot to see, but you just sort of like I like the opportunity just to see if the guy, just what he looks like. And
right, I agree.
I just remember. I remember going out to rookie minicamp and watching Sony Michel when they drafted him, and I remember my impression was, I don't see anything special about him. That was my first initial impression. Like there was no burst, there was none of this, and he went in the first round. You're just like, okay, if I'm drafting a running back, I kind of want to see something special
right. No,
out of the
right.
guy. And I have a feeling that later today when I see TreVeyon Henderson, that I'm going to be like, okay, I definitely see it, and he could have been a bottom of the first round guy for sure.
Yeah, well, obviously you probably saw some of his tape, and he can take it to the house. There's no issue with his explosiveness.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the next guy that they took, Kyle Williams, the wide receiver. What do you see out of Kyle?
Williams was a fascinating. I watched him very early in the process because I know some people at Washington State. So, because he wasn't like a household name. So someone told me about him early, and I watched him, and it's interesting. I felt the one thing that I wasn't certain of, and I know he ran a 4.4, and I think a lot of people automatically see that this guy can run. The question I had was whether he can be a true vertical dimension at the next level, meaning the NFL. And I wasn't certain. I think he's got great lateral quickness, great burst with the ball in his hands. You want to get him the ball. You want to use him in a way where he has free access off the line of scrimmage. He's not a big guy. I think that if he can be a vertical dimension, then obviously he becomes a totally different player. And I'm sure they think he can be, or they wouldn't have drafted him where they did. And like I said, I didn't feel like, he couldn't be, but I wasn't certain. But to me, you want to get the ball in this guy's hands, whether it's the screen game, whether it's short passes, whether it's jet sweeps. This is the kind of guy you want to get the ball in his hands. And if he can truly end up being a vertical dimension, then I think he can be a really valuable piece of a receiving core. I mean, he's not a wide receiver one in a strict sense, but if he can get over the top of defenses, then it changes a lot of things.
Yeah. Greg, I don't know if you do this, but did you have a comp for him? I saw a little bit of Greg Jennings. I had a NFL GM say that they saw Tyler Lockett. I don't know.
Oh, interesting.
Ready. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because when you mentioned a comp, because I didn't know where he was going to get drafted because I probably did him before the combine. I thought that if he could be a vertical dimension, I kind of saw like a Marvin Mims comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Now the Patriots would certainly hope that he's much more of a volume receiver than Mims, although Mims was drafted, I can't remember who he was drafted, but reasonably high.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that was the way I thought of him, and again, these comparisons, as you know, Greg, are not apples to apples. They're just, thoughts pop into your head. It's not, oh, he's exactly that guy, and I hope people don't take it that way, because that's not the way I think about it when a name pops into my head.
Yeah. Mims was a second-round pick, 63rd overall. We will hit a few more draft picks in just a second as soon as we hear from our friends at Factor. Ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals based on a randomized, controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto. Results will vary depending on diet and exercise, with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week. It's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Choose from your preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto, which is the ones I get. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. I totally agree with that. Love the way it comes, the packaging, the freezer packs, everything's fresh. Pop it right into the refrigerator and then pop it right into the microwave. And the sauces, the seasoning, this is no cardboard diet food. Let me tell you that. This is like eating at a restaurant right out of your refrigerator because the seasoning is so good on every single meal that I've tried. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Bedard50off to use code Bedard50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Bedard50off at factormeals.com/Bedard50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Okay, so we are now on to probably the quote-unquote most controversial pick of the Patriots. Again, Greg, I'm similar to you. Like, I don't really care who the team picks or where they pick them.
Right.
They do a lot more work. They're entitled to. I don't grade picks. I don't grade drafts, anything like that. But I would say on the whole, most people were surprised at Craig Woodson going in the 4th round. But I look at it this way: the Patriots were picking 4th on day 3. They had all night and up to noon on Saturday to figure out who they wanted or if they wanted to trade down. And I'm sure they had opportunities to trade down. They stuck where they were, and they picked Craig Woodson, the safety. Why do you think they did that?
Well, I really liked his tape, so I can only go by how I felt watching his tape. It's odd that the University of California had 3 guys in the back end this year that were drafted and that were definitely quality prospects. Wooden's a big kid. He runs well. His athletic testing was really good. He's smooth. He's fluid. This is a Vrabel guy because his game, he played with competitive toughness. There's a physical component to his game. He played downhill in the run game really, really well. He saw things really clearly. He had a quick trigger. I mean, this guy, you watch his tape and you don't have to wait long to see Woodson where he is. Now, I think he's better playing forward than backward, but hey, that's okay. They probably see a way to deploy him in the context of specific defenses. Don't forget he's a 4th round pick, Greg. You know this. People automatically assume, this guy. Well, I don't know what's he going to be. Well, he's a 4th round pick. So if he turns out to be a guy that plays every snap, that's great. But if he turns out to be a guy that plays 25 snaps, you know what? That's great too because he's a 4th round pick. So I really liked watching him. Like I said, you did not have to wait long to know where Craig Woodson was when you watch Cal tape. So, he was a good tackler downhill. I thought, again, I never know who guys are going to draft. And I'm like you. I'm not. When teams draft, I go, okay, they drafted him. I don't try to figure it out, Mm-hmm. But I think he's a really intriguing prospect, and I think he's going to play. And again, he's a rookie, so don't know what's going to happen. But I think he's going to play in the league, and he's going to play important snaps. That could be 12 snaps a game. because you know how it is. If a team, let's say, plays dime as they're on third down, for the coach, those 12 snaps of dime are really important. I mean, that's the way it works. So, but I like Woodson. I liked his tape.
Yeah, it's funny because I asked Ryan Cowden spoke to us, I think after that draft or in the middle of that day 3, and I asked him about Woodson, and he brought up the Titans safety that was really good that they had for years that I think was undrafted, and his name's escaping me right now. Kevin Byard. Now it wasn't a comp. Oh, he was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was I think he was like a later pick, but
I could see a general comparison. Again, it's not apples to apples, but I could see that.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't, he said, I'm not going to compare anybody to Byard, but it was sort of similar that basically he was saying like, we know what we're looking for. We got Kevin Byard that was a 3rd round pick, 64th, probably earlier than most people thought. And, so that, that's a good sign for him.
Well, it's funny because here in my transition, because what I do is strengths, weaknesses, transition. My final line that I typed, because I watched 6 games, I said, my sense breaking down Woodson's tape is that he can develop into a starting safety in a defense that features quarters as a foundation, where his trigger and physicality in the run game can be maximized, and his limitations both as a man coverage and deep safety can be minimized. And that's why he's a 4th round pick, Greg, because he does have some limitations. But what he's good at, he's really good at.
Yeah, and that basically sounds like a total description of Vrabel and his defense in terms of the style that they played.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
The final 2 picks, I'm going to group them in together because, we just went from the Patriots' quote-unquote biggest reach of the draft in Woodson, according to draft analysts. People uniformly think that with Josh Farmer and Bradyn Swinson, that Patriots might have gotten steals with these 2 guys.
Well, I can only tell you what I think, and I loved them both, particularly Swinson. I can tell you right now, and no one knows what's going to happen in the future, okay? No one knows. And a lot of times when you draft guys, you're drafting traits, and you're drafting what you think they can be down the road. And I spoke to someone, I'm about to say something that'll seem like it's a bold, controversial statement, but I spoke to someone who agreed with me. I thought Swinson's college tape now, not what might happen 3 years down the road. I thought Swinson's college tape was better than James Pierce's college tape. And now I think that I really liked him a lot. And I was surprised he was drafted where he was. I thought he was better than that. And only time will tell. I thought he really understood how to fire and strike with his hands with really precise timing and placement, because there's a spot you want to hit with your hands when everybody's taught that. It's just inside the shoulder blade, because there's certain spots where like nobody reacts. Think of it this way, and I learned this from an O-line coach years ago. No O-lineman reacts by doing this. That's not a normal reaction. So where they teach guys to hit is right there, because no one does this. That's just, not normal. And Swinson was really, really good at that. He just understood that really well. I thought, because he had such a great understanding of hand usage, and he had an array of moves, chops, 1- and 2-hand swipes. He understood how to play off contact, which you have to do in the NFL. You don't run around people. You have to play off contact. I thought he showed a speed to power conversion element. I really liked his tape a lot. And he has long arms. I mean, these things matter. He has long arms. He's got a big wingspan. His 20-yard shuttle was phenomenal for a guy who's almost 6'4" and 255. I thought he was one of the better edge prospects in the draft class, quite honestly, Greg. And like I said, I was surprised that he lasted until he did.
Yeah. And Farmer
I liked a lot too. I think he's an ascending player. I watched him last, what I do a lot, and I'm actually doing it right now, is I try to watch about 100 guys who I'm pretty certain are going to be in next year's draft, the following year's draft. So I watched Farmer last summer from 2023. And then of course I watched him again, for his tape this year. I think that he's got really strong, heavy hands. He's got quick, active feet. Now, I don't want to say that he's Milton Williams exactly, but I think he's sort of like Milton Williams light at this point, and that he can improve to become that kind of player. Now, whether he does or not, there's 10 variables that would go into that. But, I think that he can develop into a pass rusher as he gains experience, as he gets coached. He's really strong. He's got ridiculously long arms. They're 35 inches. His wingspan is absurd. So, I think that, again, another guy, and all I can do, like I told you, is tell you how I evaluated these players. They drafted guys for the most part that I really liked on tape. So to me, they had a really good draft. I guess we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. And
but it's funny. You made a great point about, you sort of see a theme running through the kind of guys they drafted. You can see the theme running through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in the media and nobody, wants to be all rosy about everything, but whether it was what they did in free agency or what they did in the draft, I can't really complain a whole lot. Every year I do a redraft because people are like, oh, well, Bedard, you think you're so smart. What would you have done? And most years I keep 2 or 3 of the team's picks. This year I'm through the first 2 days, including the trade downs. I'm like, I would have done exactly what they did. And so we'll see how it plays out.
Look, history suggests that not everybody's going to make it. And, but people need to also understand that when you get to day 3, obviously teams are drafting guys they think can contribute. They're not just, throwing, what against the wall and hoping it sticks. They obviously have reasons for what they do. But people have to understand that day 3 picks, they've got a little bit of an uphill battle. So I really like Farmer's tape. I really like Swinson's tape. I really like Woodson's tape. But they're not automatics. They're day 3 players. And for theoretically for a reason. Now, do I think Swinson and Farmer should have been drafted earlier? Yeah, I do. That's just my, as Billy Joel once said, my pointless point of view. But obviously they made it to day 3. So that means that they've got a lot of work to do. 1, to make the team, and 2, to get meaningful snaps.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we will end it there. We can't thank Greg enough. Check out our friends over at Prizepicks, Factor Meals, also BostonSportsJournal.com, where I will produce a transcript of this in probably a couple parts, because people can't get enough of Greg Cosell and his opinions. And so, Greg, thank you very much for taking the time. And we really appreciate it. And I'll keep listening to whatever you put out there.
I appreciate it, Greg. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.